Yes, please. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
何かあったのかな。
そう。あ、間違いねえ。たった一人でこれだけの人数を相手にできるのは奴らの他にはありえねえ。おい、先ほど手配した救急車がこちらに向かっております。しばらく待ちを。救急車はそうだったな。
怪しい。
Yeah, something
レオン
is.
と共にビルに侵入し、医者を呼んだ男。
救急車が来るまで
Yeah.
そのそばを離れるんじゃないぞ。分かったな。
しかし、私は幻影旅団抹殺の。
Anymore.
この時点ではネオンは帰る予定だった。ネオンだけは守り抜かねばならんのだ。もうしばらくここにいろ。
Of course, his intentions are a bit concerning as well, though. His dad, her dad. Oh, you're being hunted. Your turn, is it?
意外と歯ごたえがね。いや、期待しすぎた俺がばっ。
Now, who's driving? This might explain the missing few members.
まったく、ここはいつから戦場の真っ只中になったんだ。患者はどこかね。
安全確認のため、
These two might just jump off, though.
ここじゃ携帯が繋がらないし、電車も
Let's go up.
いつ動き出すかわかんないし、走っていくか。
It's not in their nature to just sit around, is it?
てめえも雇われた殺し屋なら、こんなとこに隠れてねえで戦いに出たらどうだ。
ビル内だけでも見回るべきかと。
そうだな。
He wants to go have a look.
連絡したらすぐに戻ってこい。
ここにいるすべてが組織の組長と大幹部のはず。旅団の襲撃に対しても揺るがぬ結束をアピール
Yeah, that they're not afraid.
危険を承知で来ているが。
携帯返せ。
Pride.
わかんねえ。それから他の道具もよ。
銃刀類の持ち込みは慣例に禁止されておりますので。
How about that, though, right? Sitting ducks.
オークショニアや競売運営の責任者クラスでは収集できなくなるのも時間の問題。
There's this illusion of control that they think they have.
は
Yes.
ようやく繋がった。
Oh,
今大丈夫？いや、悪いが忙しい。
maybe not right
こち
now.
らからかけ直そう。
ちょっと待って。じゃあ1分だけ。要件だけ言うから。
Yeah,
俺
explain.
とキルは旅団にあった。
っていうか、捕まっちゃったんだけど。
何を考えてるんだお前たちは。
相手がどれだけ危険な連中か分かってるのか。
Like a big brother.
今の俺たちだと手も足も出ない。だからクラピカの協力がいるんだ。
俺たちも力になりたい。
Oh.
ふざけるな。お前たちの自殺行為に手を貸す気はない。
奴らのアジト知りたくない？
情報提供者はちゃんといる。
隊員の能力についても分かったことがある。
くどい。いいから旅団。
Yeah, he doesn't want them getting all mixed up in this.
奴らの一人を倒した鎖野郎ってクラピカだろ。あいつら血眼で探してるよ。
お前が俺たちのこと仲間とも対等とも思えないなら、どんな手使ってでも協力してもらうぜ。
俺たちもあいつらを止めたいんだ。
頼むよ、クラピカ。こちらからかけ直す。
More to think about here,
お
huh?
前が俺たちのこと仲間とも対等とも思えないなら、
Yeah.
俺たちもあいつらを止めたいんだ。
Oh, he's being manipulated.
ダメだ。あいつら強すぎる。俺たちじゃ太刀打ち。
Or he's just retreating, I guess.
どのくらい強いのかと。
No. He's under the influence. Sean Mark. Oh my god.
ああ、壊れちゃった。
He broke.
次のマシン探さなきゃ。
My next machine. How about that? Yeah, see, Kurapika didn't need anyone else getting mixed up in this because, again, you know, that's a bit of a not distraction sounds harsh, but again, I'll get into it. Woo! glorious.
まさか集結させようとしている2000人近い構成員すべてやられちまってるのか。
Oh my god, is it about to
侵
happen?
入者は旅団に間違いない。目的は残りのオークションの品と仲間の敵討ち望むところだ。
わしはゼノゾロディックというものじゃ。
Listen up.
伝説の暗殺一家ゾルディック家。
現在一人このビル内に資格が入っとる。
Quite the technique there, huh,
主
Crollo?
らがそれぞれ武器を持ったとしても、
No
わし
chance.
ならこの場で7秒以内に全員殺せ。敵も似たような力量じゃ。分かったら黙ってそこにおれ。死にたいなら別だがの。
My god, the music in this anime is just peak, top tier stuff. Whoa.
じゃ。
背後から一撃見事だな。さっきもほんの一瞬で消し。
Go on, Zeno.
円を使うか。
Ah.
神経削るから死んだ。
Yeah, perhaps at that age.
全くもって割に合わん仕事じゃて。
But is it exciting? Who's going to run into him first? Or who is he going to allow himself to be seen by first? Rather.
遅いぞ。すぐ戻ってこい。
はい、戻ります。
Oh. Duty calls. So it'll be the Zolodix then, huh? He's on the other side, isn't he? Oh. This is insane.
久しぶりだね。
俺を覚えているのか。
Right. The gig they had before.
仲間の一人をやられてるしね。
苦労した。
It was a bit of a hassle, yeah. Look at this.
親父、気をつけろ。奴は他人の脳。
Ah. So he can. But they phrase it as he can steal your ability. Oh. Go on, Kroll. Let's go. Let's go. Let's see. Let's see this. Oh.
2対1はさすがにきついな。
俺の肌に傷をつけるとはなかなかいいナイフだな。
Yeah, that's a...
デザインから見て、ベンズの中期。
Ah.
あの形状。
They set that up a few episodes ago.
問題ない。
問題ないっすか。0.1mg でクジラとか動けなくする
But
薬なんだ
this is...
けど。
He's built different, though.
他人の念を盗むか。
Oh.
しつけじゃな。もし
Yes.
盗んだ能力を自在に使えるとしたら脅威じゃの。
Ah.
だがそれは盗む際のリスクの
Of
高さを
course.
意味する。
Restrictions, conditions.
能力は得られまい。4つか5つ。盗むまでにクリアすればならない条件があると見た。
ご名答。やりづらいじいさんだ。
Of course,
わしら
Zeno.
二人と戦いながらその条件をクリアするのは至難。シルはサポートせい。わしが奴の動きを止めたら、わしもろともで構わん。やり。
There is a bit of mutual respect at play here.
手にオーラを集中させた。凄まじいポテンシャル。
There's
当てつけたら俺の防御力でもガードしきれない。
There's got to be a few twists at play here, surely. The book. Okay. Skill Hunter. Okay, the book is a crucial component. The owl. No. Okay, so it has to be open to that page.
グイーンかけか。厄介じゃの。
Whoa. Dragon head. Ah. I've been calling them the heads of the dragon this whole time.
読めたわ。
Yeah, he's got to hold the book open. It's
奴
clear.
自身の能力は具現化した本に他人の能力を封じ込め、さらに自在に引き出し使えるというもの。しかしその代償として引き出した能力を使う際は常にその本を手にしていなければならない。
Yeah, that's quite the handicap, right?
引き出したマントも具現化系。
恐ろしいじいさんだ。一瞬にしてこっちの狙いは全て見切られたか。生け捕りは無理かな。
本を閉じると引き出した能力も消えるわけだ。親父の攻撃を紙一重でかわしながら俺への警戒も全く怠らない。あの時より
The first encounter.
さらに向上している。命を落として動きを止めない限り確実には仕留められない。
Oh. Careful.
やれ。
Wow. Clash of the Titans indeed, eh?
その振動が予想外の展開を生むことをクラピカはまだ知らない。
Of course, it's a textbook cut off, the cliffhanger. Of course he's not going to die.
キルアの関西プロメディア。今日ご紹介するのは
Shalnar, the homie.
知識が豊富で頭が切れる知性派。
Yes.
念能力は対象者にアンテナを刺し自身の携帯で操るブラックボイス。
Ah, I got a name. Okay, so yeah, that's really quite the cliffhanger. I mean, that's like a textbook cliffhanger, isn't it? But of course, us the audience knows that it's essentially just, I mean, Crollo is not going to die. The fortune from the last episode dictates that he's simply not going to die here, in that spot. Of course, that doesn't mean he cannot be hurt. He can be hurt. He could be badly hurt. It doesn't specify anything against that, but also, in terms of the fortune, the prophecy by Neon, again, some of these things are not meant to play out until maybe later in the month, right? Of course, one of them is certainly not Crollo dying, right? Because he is going to survive and all of that. And maybe, some of his approach kind of reflected that, right? Like Zeno, almost immediately, noted and noticed and deduced so effortlessly, really, throughout that encounter. One of the things he saw almost immediately is that, Crollo is taking a defensive approach, right? Because, as he stated at one point, his goal is essentially to capture both of them, I suppose. But, for the most part, it's more of a Zeno against Crollo fight. Right. And then, of course, Silva makes a bit of a cameo appearance every now and then. And then, of course, the major appearance is right at the conclusion of the fight. Right. As he's about to emit. Right. These are emitters. Right. Both Zeno and Silva. I mean, that was my first thought, that these are emitters. They are, I mean, these are master emitters at that. It's kind of insane, the level. I mean, it's a different level. It's a different planet altogether. Right. These three going up against each other. I mean, the amount and level of skill, the amount of experience, going into decades of experience, actually, through people like Zeno and even Silva. And then, of course, you've got Crollo, who's going up against the Zolodics, the head honchos, the heads of the dragon. And I love that Zeno's main ability, or at least one of his signature abilities that I've seen up until this point, is, the Dragon Lance. I mean, it's such a great looking ability. And, yeah, of course, the dragon itself, playing a part, that imagery. Though, of course, like I said, that imagery has been associated with the Zolodics. The first time I saw, though, of course, that was more so the gates, right? It's like the statues on the gates. But, the first time I saw that imagery was, as Illumi is straight up just telling Gon, right? They live at Kukuru Mountain, or a place called Kukuru Mountain. And, at that point, they show us this frame of Illumi and the stone dragon, right? So the imagery's been there. But yeah, that wasn't really even the reason I kept calling them the heads of the dragon. That was more so to give them that respect, right? that, the Zoldycks are known to be these incredible assassins, and these two are the best of that lot, essentially, right? As far as I know, or as far as I understand at this point. But also going back to that idea of Crollo actually trying to capture them, right? That plays in perfectly with the almost immediate reveal of his actual, specialist ability. And I was essentially on the right track. It's a bit different though. It's a bit different than I initially kind of speculated, right? I mean, it's more or less I was more or less on the right track, but there's a distinction there. I thought that he can replicate and recreate the conditions of certain abilities, just recreate them functionally. But they specify here. There's a distinction here. He steals these abilities, right? And the thing is, the implication there is that he can take those abilities from you, right? And I believe that's one of the reasons that, Silva straight up just tells his old man, he calls him his old man, of course. It's kind of endearing actually. But, he tells him, he actually makes it a note or makes it a point to actually give him a warning, right? Be careful, he can steal your abilities, right? Or he can steal abilities, right? So the fact that Silva has to kind of, tell Zeno to be careful, that's really quite, drastic, isn't it? Given how much of an understanding they have of each other and how much respect they clearly have for each other's, skill and abilities, right? They've been around for a long time, and to get to see them together as a duo, as a father son duo, it's really quite the treat, isn't it? To see the seamless communication, the incorporation of tactics, right? It's like one of those things, right? Again, I have to go back to my football analogies, but sometimes there's duos, team ups. The one that immediately comes to mind, I mean, there's many of them, but as a Liverpool supporter, the one that comes to mind immediately is Steven Gerrard and Torres. Sometimes even in the commentary, they'll call it like this psychic link. Stevie G and Torres had this incredible link up and understanding, and again, there's many of these examples. He just knew that Torres is going to occupy a certain space. So he'll kind of make a pass, taking that into account. And of course, as expected, Torres is in that space. And Torres used to make the runs, just completely expecting Gerrard to make that pass. That type of link up, that type of understanding for your partner comes from experience, right? Field experience. And of course, that's applicable to someone like Zeno and Silva. Of course, they've been out there together before on assignments, on gigs, right? Maybe it's a bit of a rare thing for both of them to team up and go out together, but to me it felt like they have an understanding for each other. And let's give Crollo a lot of credit here. It's 2-on-1, and it's not just any 2-on-1. Again, Zeno and Silva of the Zoldyck clan. But going back to the understanding that Silva and Zeno have, one moment that really just encapsulates that is, Zeno tells his son straight up, kill me. If need be, kill me. Once I pin him down, you make the kill, right? It doesn't matter if I go down as well. And Silva's response, understood. And that being said, it kind of actually plays out like that, doesn't it? Right? That team up actually kind of gave them that opening because, it became clear that Crollo is able to, dodge these attacks, right? Right at the last moment. And that was kind of making it really difficult for them to actually go in for the kill. But then you see right at the conclusion, before Silva gets to, put together that blast of his, right? That incredible display of emission, essentially. The thing is, the crazy thing is, how the hell are Zeno and Crollo supposed to escape that, right? The thing is, again, it's a cliffhanger. Who knows how things are going to play out? It could be one of those things, right? I've seen it in anime before. I think I've seen it a few times in Full Metal. It feels like, okay, this is it. How exactly are they going to get out of it? But then the moment you get to the next episode, it's like a simple explanation for it. Something else happens, and the expected result did not play out as set up in a cliffhanger, right? So it could be something along those lines. But yeah, at that point, it looked like Crollo's, he's pinned down good. Zeno got him. And again, that happened because his partner was able to distract Crollo. For a split moment, Silva essentially forced Crollo to pay him attention, right? And that gave him, or sorry, that gave Zeno the split second to finally, actually grab him, to actually, get a hold of him. Again, using his dragon lens that he can guide as well. And of course, it continues that really impressive streak of incredible fight sequences, right? And the reason I call them really quite impressive and incredible even is because of the directing choices at play here, right? Of course, it's made up of a lot of different components. I feel that they're really able to strike the perfect balance of, an engaging fight sequence, of course, many times elevated through the allocation of Sakaga, right? A lot of these fight sequences are just stunning, really, really quite impressive, and just incredible to watch, right? But then, there's layers to the fight itself because, again, given the specific nature of this anime's, Nen concept, they also really effectively bring in exposition, right? The thoughts of these characters. It gives you a chance to analyze, and it gives the fighters or the characters that are in the fight itself, it gives them, a chance to kind of analyze because, again, it's been really, really established at this point, it's all about understanding your opponent's Nen abilities, right? It's all about outsmarting your opponent, right? And of course, one of the main reasons, or sorry, one of the most important things or elements of that is actually understanding or having an understanding for your opponent's abilities. And you see that both Zeno and Silva, but you get to really listen to Zeno's internal monologue, and he gives us quite a bit in terms of exposition and, through his thoughts and exposition, I suppose, it gives us a better understanding for Crollo's ability, right? He nails it every single time because, of course, you get a confirmation through Crollo himself. But you see that Zeno is a little bit unsure, right? Because one of the things that makes Crollo so incredibly formidable and dangerous is the unpredictable nature of his abilities, because it could be anything, right? It's a bag of surprises, essentially, because at any given moment, he could pivot and, utilize a completely unknown ability to Zeno or Silva, right? Something they're going to have to kind of study and kind of get used to in the middle of the fight, in the middle of the encounter. But of course, a high stakes encounter of this ilk is not going to give you that much of a chance to understand abilities on the fly. But of course, if anyone's going to be able to do it, it's going to be Zeno. I think one of the things that really stands out here, and, I kind of brought it up on a few occasions, is the experience, right? You see Crollo is also really quite impressed. And for that reason, he takes a lot of care. He understands that this old timer is the real deal. Right? Listen, everyone knows the old timers are always the real deal. The moment they actually step out and kind of flex a bit, a few jaws begin to drop, right? And you see how much fun he's having out there, right? He enjoys it, right? Once he begins to get really into it, he's making these funny noises and just really, really into it. Silva's a bit more, reserved and stoic in his approach, and on the offensive, right? But the thing is, I suppose I have a decent collection of Nen abilities or categories for the Zoldycks at this point. I've got Illumi, the manipulator. I've got Killua, the transmuter. And then I've got the head honchos that are both emitters, as far as I understand. Right now, listen, these are special people. They could be dabbling in other, potential categories as well. That's they've set that up already, that you are able to kind of dabble in other categories. But yet my initial thought and initial appraisal, I suppose, of their abilities is that these are emitters. They are emitting incredible aura, incredible lightning-based aura, right? Energy-based aura. Silva specifically seems to dabble in the lightning and energy, bomb, energy focused type attacks, right? And the last one, it's like the kill shot, isn't it? Now, going all the way back to the Zoldyck estate arc or Zoldyck family arc, rescue Killua arc. There, I speculated that maybe Killua is special because he kind of gets it from this side of the family, right? From his father and his grandfather. Again, the really similar hair that all of them seem to have. And if you kind of stay on that path, or in that line of thinking, could this be a bit of a preview? Could this be a bit of a, hint at Killua's potential Hatsu, Now, I should kind of specify, or I should note once again, or take note that Killua is a transmuter, right? And these two appear to be emitters. And the crazy thing about this is that Kurapika was moments away from entering that room. And even in the presentation of that moment, as he's coming up the stairs, you go first person, right? You kind of have a look at the door, right? To me, that kind of felt like a moment that's kind of signifying, signifying it as this door of hope, the door of destiny, but ultimately and realistically, the door to hell, as far as Kurapika is concerned. Because if Kurapika stepped in there and came up against Chrollo, that would have been the end of Kurapika. I believe that would have been the end of Kurapika at that point. But the call from Nostrada essentially saves his life. I believe it most definitely saved his life on that night. Nostrada? Nah, more like Nostradamus. Am I right? I mean, the crazy thing is that's actually really quite applicable, really quite fitting, given, that he does have a daughter that can kind of almost kind of predict the future, right? Is able to kind of give you your fortune, right? These prophecies and all of that. And the thing is, I'm sure that Togashi actually took that into account, or that's how the name kind of came to be as well. It's entirely possible. But all of that being said, things could change dramatically for Nostrada, right? Because now, it's essentially been confirmed that indeed, Chrollo is taking people's abilities, or he is able to take people's abilities. But, after this episode, the confirmation I do get in this episode about his abilities and him specifically being able to steal rather than take or replicate, that also kind of confirms that indeed he was paying that much attention to Neon's ability in the last episode for a specific reason. I thought that was really clearly presented in the last episode, right? So being hyper-focused, gaining all of that information, learning about the abilities itself, right? By asking really calculated questions, all of that makes sense. All of that adds up, right? So the thing is, at this point, he may have Neon's abilities. And that's kind of insane. That is just absolutely insane of an ability, right? To have for someone like Chrollo, Lucilfer, the leader of the Phantom Troop. But again, the reason I'm saying that things might change for Nostrada all of a sudden is because Neon might not have those abilities anymore, right? The whole idea is meant to be that he steals those abilities, right? He snatches them. He is a bandit, right? So it makes a lot of sense. And honestly, thematically, it makes a lot of sense as well for him, right? Specifically, him being the leader of the Phantom Troop of this notorious group. This stealing ability that he does have, the snatching ability he has, it kind of allows Chrollo to almost constantly or continuously kind of reinvent himself, right? And of course, as a leader, that is something that you kind of have to do. He can go into that book he conjures. So essentially, he does have base level conjurer abilities, right? Because he does straight up just conjure that book. I believe part of the title of the book was, Skill Hunter's Secret, right? So yeah, he can just go into that book and he can turn to a page and he can put that, he can implement that ability almost immediately, right? So, again, through this encounter, you get that definitive exposition as well in terms of his abilities. And of course, for an ability this incredible, there's going to be a lot of restrictions and conditions, as Zeno was able to infer, right? He was able to intelligently deduct so many things correctly. So, they brought up the idea of some of the conditions, right? I think Zeno actually took a stab at it. He thought that there might be 4 to 5 conditions at play. And again, it almost gives us a immediate confirmation through Chrollo's reaction, right? Now, I think I've got a solid grasp or a decent grasp on a few of them because, these are some of the things that are really noticeable in the last episode as well, right? So I think one of them definitely has to be him observing the technique, right? Remember, he just gets hyper-focused. He's taking it in, really taking it in as Neon's apparition is doing its thing, right? And then, of course, the other thing that's really quite noticeable is all of the calculated questions. He's learning about the technique itself, right? The user of the technique is explaining it to him, right? So I think these two things are probably, or a really decent chance that these are two of the 4 or 5 conditions at play. Actually, there is another one that's confirmed in this episode, right? And it's actually quite the handicap because if he's using a specific ability, like I see in this episode, right? He opens the page to the owl from the Shadow Beasts, right? Maybe this explains, why they left him alive. Could that actually mean something here? Right? Because it didn't make sense to me that they didn't kill him, right? And they made it a point to focus on his legs, and it's actually really a fantastic shot. I know it's a little bit morbid given the fact that he was being tortured, even though apparently he gave it up almost immediately, according to Phaeton. He was alive at that point. So is that something else to keep in mind? Because, another thing that's kind of, I don't know, not baffling, but it's kind of been confusing me a bit, is the whole, call an ambulance, call a doctor for Neon, right? Now, my first thought was maybe this could be some of the other members of the Phantom Troop that didn't take part in the Requiem in the last episode. I mean, it kind of continues into this episode as well, the Requiem aspect of it. They took out something like 2,000 men easily. Like I said, it was like a training session, exhibition, and they just took him out. Now, one guy is just baffled. He nearly shit himself thinking about the possibility, the truth of the matter that all of that backup has been just decimated, like it's nothing. But now, it's really clear, and as Kurapika also deduced in the last episode, no, they had no intentions of kidnapping her. The intention here was to come in contact with Neon so he can snatch her ability, right? That, and it all kind of adds up. It all kind of fits perfectly now. The fact that he took an interest in that ability, right? And he's trying to do the same here, right? That's why he's on the defensive, as Zeno noted, right? So if he was on the offensive, that could have been a bit of a different fight, right? Not saying that he'd be able to take down the two Zoldycks, but the dynamic of the fight would have shifted, right? But he was on the defensive because he's trying to capture them by using the owl's abilities, right? He broke out the tarp. Just the thought of that, him trying to capture the Zoldycks like there's some legendary Pokemon, right? But of course, he understood in the heat of the battle. He was able to understand that no, this is a bit too difficult to actually pull off. So he gives up on that. But yeah, that's the other confirmation. He's got to have the book open. And that was one of the points I was making in the last episode, right? They made it a point to show us, right, that the book is open, and then he closes the book, right? And then, there it kind of made it seem like, okay, maybe they, I mean, yeah, the indoor fish, he does specify that they have to be in an enclosed space. And then, of course, as he opens the window, they kind of disappear, don't they? So I kind of assumed it was for that reason, and it still might be, but maybe, him closing the book is also the other reason. That ability just kind of disappears altogether. But yeah, it appears that it's just a normal doctor, and maybe I was just overthinking it. I was just really hyper suspicious of it all. But the guys that accompany him, they do that anime thing of, oh, you can't see their eyes, and they're barely responding or replying. So I don't know, maybe there could be something else at play here. But yeah, Chrollo wanted to make sure to call the ambulance or the doctor for Neon just in case. So yeah, it's an incredible ability, and perhaps at first glance, an ability that is essentially kind of OP. But once you really start looking at it, and some of the handicaps and some of the conditions and all of that, the restrictions at play, maybe, and possibly it's not as OP as it might seem at first sight, but it's incredible nonetheless, especially in the hands of someone like Chrollo, right? Who's impressive nonetheless, even without any of these specialist abilities. It's clear to see. You have someone like Silva. In his internal monologue, he noted that he's already so much physically stronger than their last encounter. I mean, I'm not sure if they're ever going to actually show the first encounter, and there's no need to actually show it really truly, but still, right? The fact that Silva complained about this gig, as reported by Killua a few episodes ago, that tells you all you need to know about the hassle it was to go up against the Phantom Troop or Chrollo specifically. But again, he took out one of the members of the Phantom Troop, and Chrollo did not forget, of course. So of course, there was a replacement for that member. Do I know the other replacement? I know. Of course, Hisoka took the number 4 slot, or took number 4's position. And the other one, maybe I'm having a brain fart moment. Did they confirm it? I don't know if they confirmed it yet, did they? Because I do remember in the Gathering of Heroes, they specified that there's 2 new members, or recent members rather. But, going back to Chrollo's ability, and if indeed, stealing the ability does mean that he's legitimately just stealing it, snatching it away from the other Nen user, that is insane as well, right? Once you do put it into practice, especially if it's in a one-on-one fight. Because if he is successful in snatching that ability, that person's kind of left like a sitting duck, right? That ability is gone in that fight, in that encounter. But again, there's levels to it. It's not as easy as it seems, as showcased in this encounter. He understood and he realized, it's not a good idea to continue this, this pursuit of capturing the Zoldycks, so he can take their abilities. But of course, naturally, I'm immediately thinking about any encounter between him and Kurapika, right? And then of course you've got Kurapika's chains and all of that. So he could snatch Kurapika's chains, his abilities. Now, the chains themselves and the conditions are so specific to the Phantom Troop in terms of functionality, but him taking those from Kurapika again kind of leaves him as a sitting duck if it was to ever play out in that manner, right? As a hypothetical, as a what if situation. But that being said, of course, Kurapika does have the element of surprise, and that was one of the reasons he's dead set on going up against them one-on-one, right? Taking them out one-on-one. Because he doesn't need anyone from the Phantom Troop or anyone in general really seeing how his abilities function. I mean, Kurapika was more than happy to explain all of it to Uvogin, right? His abilities and how they function. So I don't know. All I know is that any potential Chrollo and Kurapika encounter promises to be really quite intense. Even with all of those extreme conditions for his chains, specifically for the Phantom Troop, it's a tall order. I think it's a really, really tough task at hand. And he was kind of saved from it, from facing Chrollo, right? Unintentionally by Nostrada's call. And the thing is, even if Chrollo did have the fortune or the prophecy in mind in terms of, him surviving and all of that and him not dying, you see there's a few moments he's got a really distinct look on his face, right? A look of concern. It happened twice, right at the conclusion, of course, that massive blast that Silva is about to unleash, and a little bit earlier as Silva is coming down at him. It's a bit of a funny angle. You see Silva's ass as Chrollo's looking up, but he had a look of concern there. There's a few moments of that. But it's kind of insane that after the last episode, I got this sequence, right? The Zoldycks up against Chrollo. And again, the sequence itself, the scene itself is incredible. The actual fight sequence, right? Really impressive. Really quite engaging, really quite dynamic. Anytime you have these types of masters going up against each other, it's a big deal. It's a really big deal, right? So I'm really quite excited to see how this cliffhanger plays out. I highly doubt anyone's going to die from it. But also, that being said, the narrator actually is kind of implying that the outcome of it is going to be something quite surprising for Kurapika, I believe. It was something along those lines. So let's see. I'm sure there's going to be quite a unique continuation to this. Ooh, also, there's a bit of a callback to something that was set up a few episodes ago, right? The Ben's knife. Chrollo had one, right? And he was kind of expecting or hoping, yeah, it's going to do its thing. But the Zoldycks are built a bit different, aren't they? As kind of set up all that time ago in the beginning of the series. Though of course, I'm not sure. It's not a confirmation that just because Killua is kind of immune to poison, right? As he tells Tonpa, or maybe not immune. It just doesn't have an effect on him, right? Or his body's used to it, something along those lines. It doesn't mean that. To me, the thing is, to me, it feels like kind of like basic training. So I'm just kind of assuming that the more experienced Zoldycks, like Zeno and Silva, are also, in the same boat. And also in terms of abilities, there's a bit of a showcase for Shalnark's abilities, right? There's a focus on Shalnark. It's quite a morbidly hilarious scene, actually, And it's really, really quite interesting given Shalnark's disposition, right? He's really quite personable. He's really quite happy at all times, and he likes all of his friends, his teammates, his comrades, and everyone seems to like him and respect him as well. But the fact that, oh my god, His ability is essentially, turning humans into these remote controlled puppets. And he doesn't even really consider them humans anymore, right? At one moment he said, "Aw, he broke." The homie said, "This dude broke." And then I think he said, "Oh, I have to go find another machine." So the contrast there is really quite shocking, or really quite jarring, isn't it? But yeah, essentially, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? It's almost as if he's just kind of taking over, right? Takes over their autonomy, and he's playing a game on his little controller thing. He's legitimately kind of like button mashing, and he's getting a first person look at it. And lastly, I've got to touch up on quite an important scene. Gon finally makes contact with Kurapika, and it's really, really a fantastic scene. You really get to see the two really, distinct personalities on display. You've got how Killua kind of handles it and how Gon handles it. And Killua, he gets a little bit agitated, he gets a little bit frustrated, and you see that he's in a bit of a bad mood. I mean, he's certainly annoyed with Kurapika's handling of this, his treatment of Gon and Killua. I mean, there's a really impactful line of dialogue. If you're not going to treat us as equals or friends, then we'll just do whatever's needed to help you anyways, right? So, that's something that's food for thought, right? That certainly is food for thought as Kurapika thinks about that moment later on. But of course, Kurapika's reaction is also to be expected, right? At first, he's just baffled and just shocked, right? And immediately concerned for their safety, that, they got mixed up in all of this. So you see that, protective older brother side kind of kicks in almost immediately. And he certainly does his absolute best to kind of keep that distance, right? He completely just disregards and dismisses anything, they had to say at first, especially Killua, who's talking about, "Oh, do you know about their hideout? Do you know about some of their abilities?" Because he knows about a few of them, or at least one of them, right? He figured out Pakunara's abilities. So yeah, they can help. They can certainly help Kurapika, but the thing is, it's also understandable from Kurapika's perspective, right? There's a few angles to it, of course. One of them is simply because he simply does not want to endanger them. He doesn't want them getting caught up in all of this. But another angle to this is the fact that, he decided to be solo on this mission of his, because he knows, it could have an impact on him, an emotional impact on him, if people he cares for get mixed up in this, right? And then he has to kind of have that on his mind as well. Then it becomes a totally new dynamic, right? The thing is, it has become that, right? He has to accept it. They are a part of this now. They got mixed into this. So it is about to be a different dynamic, and it is going to be interesting how it is going to possibly affect Kurapika in his pursuit of the Phantom Troop, because now Gon and Killua are a part of this as well, right? It's kind of like that point I made about Killua a few episodes ago as they're tracking Nobunaga and Machi, right? He feels responsible for Gon. He does. So the same thing might happen for Kurapika. And this kind of goes back to some of the speculation I had about, the selfish nature of hunters, right? And how it's applicable to everyone and anyone, really, from the principal cast. One of the things I talked about there, one of the possibilities I talked about was, if Kurapika finds himself in a situation, that requires him to make a choice. One choice possibly being in favor of, helping his friends in a tricky situation, right? Possibly in a life or death situation. And the other possibility being a choice in favor of continuing his pursuit of the Phantom Troop. Yeah, so see, that possibility, it's becoming a real possibility at this point, now that, Gon and Killua are getting mixed up in this, right? And they are going to kind of come across Kurapika in the next few episodes, hopefully. But yeah, I think that should do it for this one, folks. Another enjoyable episode. I mean, it's banger after banger at this point. Yorknew City is in full flow. It's really shaping up to be an incredible arc. So if you enjoyed this, consider dropping a like, consider dropping some comments, give me your thoughts. If you are interested in early access to the next few episodes right now, there's early access to 4 or 5 episodes even. Perhaps full opacity, or maybe even timer-based full length, consider checking out the Patreon page and potentially supporting the channel. There's also links to social media if that's your thing. Right then, thank you so much for joining me, folks, and thank you for your time, because time is precious. It really is. And I do hope to see you again soon for episode 53. Until then, take it easy.